What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist, or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked, as well as what this podcast is about. In this show, we will examine past life memories, speak with professional hypnotherapists, astral projection practitioners, psychics, and much more. All in an attempt to decipher this riddle. So welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to the regression session. Welcome back to the regression session. My name is Ian, and this week we'll be hearing part 2 of the interview we started last time with Fiona Harris. And Fiona is a fountain of knowledge and a wonderful hypnotherapist. So if you're interested in having a past life regression or a healing with Fiona, head on over to her website, clearpathhealing.com, and there'll be a link to that in the description. Remember, if you're interested in coming onto the show to share your story or your knowledge or your own experiences, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and you can also find me on Twitter and Facebook. I go by The Regression Session on both of those. And here is part 2 of my interview with Fiona Harris.
You know, they don't come into us because they want to wreak havoc. They're trying to get their needs met. They're trying to get help, and we can do that. It's just knowing that we can.
Yeah, and she was telling me that the whole time she didn't feel like she was necessarily out of control. Like, she said that she felt she could probably step back in at any point. But another interesting thing is, in both of these experiences with my brother and my sister, their spirit guides were there. And I talked to both of them, and they both told me that they didn't feel like it was part of them, the guide. They said that they felt like it was a separate energy, like it was a separate being, and it acted independently. So both of them had their guide there, kind of overseeing this whole process. And that makes me feel like, you know, it's not me that's necessarily the common link. It was just both of them independently, maybe, that have the mediumistic kind of thing that you were talking about. Because I haven't had it happen with anybody else.
But I need to have a regression with you just to figure out what you're doing that's different. But I think and I don't know if you do this with all the clients, but you have. So when I regress a client, I'll ask them questions. I'll say, let's say I say, what are you wearing on your feet? They'll be like, oh, I'm wearing leather shoes and I'm going over here and this is happening. But it sounds like when you regress people, that they're not talking as their present self describing the situation. They're talking as the person in the situation. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. So a lot of the time, the past personality will kind of step up to the forefront. Because the way I do it, and like I said, I'm an open book. I'm a firm believer in not. I don't feel like I guide the session. I feel like the session guides me. I feel like the people almost naturally step into these past lives. Some people take a lot more prodding than others. So there are some sessions, obviously, where I have to kind of pull them through. But a lot of the time, I feel like I'm running to keep up, especially if it's their second or third time doing it, because they will speak to me. Like, for example, I did one for my wife the other day, and she was like, I'm trying to remember the exact words, so don't quote me on this, but she was talking about how she was in a city in Europe, and there was a fountain, and she was like, there's a little girl and she's throwing a coin into the well, and I think she's making a wish, but I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. And I said, well, why do you think it's stupid? And she said, because I'm going to go steal the coins. And I just kind of chuckled, and I was like, why are you going to steal the coins? Just because I thought maybe she was in poverty. And then she just said, oh, I was just kidding. I would never do that. I already have my own shop. Then she was like, started talking about, oh, and I just said hi to the butcher, and we're friends. We see each other and we talk, but we're not like good friends. We're just friendly. And then she starts talking about like, I'm in a carriage and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So it's never in, I see this, I see that. It's I am this, and I say, what's happening to you? What in this life that you're in? What's happening to you? What's emerging before you? And so it's very, very. They're assuming this other personality.
Okay, so no, you're doing it the same way as me, and it sounds like they're experiencing the same way as my clients do. When you worked with your wife, how many times have you regressed her?
I think it's 3 or 4.
Yeah, see, that's probably a big part of it too, is when you are doing a couple of regressions with a person and they get super comfortable with you, it's really, really easy for them to regress. But I don't know, I had a client similar, like, how you said your brother had a drawl and
yes,
and was able to really like get right in there. I had one client like that who he was right in it. He was talking in a similar way, almost kind of like a New York Bronx kind of, almost like a 1930s, just some of his vernacular, just some certain things he said. I'm like, okay, that's not the slang we use these days, right? And he was right in there. It was like everything was happening to him. And I think he was just someone who regressed really easy. And I know that when I regress, I talk like crazy. I can't stop talking. I can say everything and I can describe how I feel. Yeah, I think that I know you say that you feel like you're just kind of at the beginning of your experience as being a hypnotist and doing regression and stuff. I think you've got some strong stuff going on with your sessions.
Well,
it's gonna be interesting to like talk to you 10 years from now, because I bet you'll have some crazy stories. I bet we both will.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because like, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I'm just kind of guiding it. I don't really, my thing is I don't really follow a script. I did it first, but I don't really follow a script because
like a script with inductions or like afterward
at all.
Yeah.
I was told, and it might be the way that I kind of came into it. So I did an episode with, like I told you, her name was Tia, and she told me a while ago that it had to do with your chakra system. So she said, in order to reach your past lives, you have to travel up into the third eye chakra, and then you have to travel back down. I think she said to the root or something like that. I don't remember her exact words. I wish I would have paid more attention. But what's interesting is it's usually the first time I've done it. And this has happened with every single person that I've done it with the first time. They're almost always drawn up and then they're drawn back down. But the thing is I just ask them, like, where do you feel like you're supposed to go? I don't ever tell them anything about like, you're supposed to go up or you're supposed to go down. I ask them, so where do you feel drawn to? And they're always like, I think I'm supposed to go up. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to get there? Go ahead and go, and they'll go. And then, okay, I'm up here now. And I'm not really sure what I'm doing. It's like, okay, well, where are you drawn to? I think I feel like I'm supposed to go back down. So then they'll go back down. It's usually some kind of like they'll either float or they'll walk up some kind of an invisible staircase, but they're always drawn up and then drawn back down at least for the first time when they're kind of getting used to it. And a lot of the time, the same thing. I guess it's mostly like with my brother and sister that they've come through and talked as if they were the person. It's happened one or two other times, but yeah, most of the time I do get people I try to get people talking as if they're the first person, because I kind of feel like it helps them to almost remember more if you're remembering your own. It's weird. It's hard to explain.
To really embody it, you want to be right in there. No, actually, I think when you always regress a client, they're always saying, I'm going here. This is happening to me. I'm feeling this. But, I wonder, and I mean, this is just me kind of musing, because I think all the time, like, I wonder, like, what I'm doing. Like, this is so crazy. How's this even happening? I wonder if we're not just all just healing ghosts all the time.
That's the thought that I've had, and I seriously have been afraid to say it out loud, because like we're all just like channeling something. But however, I have had people, like I had one that I actually did an interview with her, and I haven't released the episode yet. But she said that she remembered being an old woman, like late 80s, early 90s, and she remembered that she was sitting in front of her mirror. And we went through her whole life. It was very, very interesting life. Had really good messages to it and everything like that. But she knew that was the night she was going to die of old age, right? She just knew, like, she brushed her hair really nice. And in this life, she felt very, very lonely. She said that after her husband passed away very early, she lived like the next, let's just say 70 plus years by herself, and she just never remarried. She was very well off because she inherited her husband's money, and she inherited money from her well-off family. So she just did a lot of charity work, worked with like women's suffrage, things like that. But she knew she was going to die that night. So she brushed her hair and laid down and just never woke up. And she was at peace with that. She was ready. And she said that she immediately, after kind of talking with her guide, either she chose or was given what she called a gift of just being in a womb. And she said that the reason that was done was because she needed to feel like she was just loved, and she had someone that was always there for her, and that she was just, you're always taken care of. When you're in the womb, you are always surrounded by something, by someone, right? And then she said that either it was just like an experience that was given to her, or she was a stillborn. She said she couldn't quite figure that out. But then she told me she moved right into her current life, and that's how it went down.
That's, I mean, I think about that a lot. The one thing because sometimes I get told stuff. So sometimes when I'm doing a reading or doing energy work on someone, sometimes I'll just like start channeling information, and it's so amazing when it happens. But one of the things that I channeled was often a soul might decide like, okay, I've been an animal for so long, or I've been a tree, or I've been an alien or whatever. I want to go to Earth now. And Earth is a very, very heavy, like to be a human on Earth is a heavy and difficult thing. It's very, very challenging. And we all know that. That's why everyone's like, oh my God, I have anxiety. I have depression. I can't pay my rent. Like, what's going on with COVID? What's going on with all these riots and all this stuff? Like, this is a very challenging place to be. And sometimes a soul might want to just come in and go in the womb and just experience being alive for a few weeks of like coming into a body and feeling the heaviness, and then leave again and be like, oh, thank God I'm free. Okay, take a deep breath. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try to go into a body again. This time I might only last for like 3 months. And so I feel like a lot of miscarriages are just souls kind of wading in the water, dipping their toes in and then taking off again because it's difficult, right? One thing that I love doing, and maybe you do this too, is when I do a regression with someone, I'm going through their life. In the end, I take them to their death. And then I'll say, now I want you to feel leaving your body. And I just want you to float above your body, looking down. Can you see your body? And they're just like, yeah, I'm floating. And I'll say, so where are you floating? You know, are you going up? Are you staying in the same place? And, you know, generally they'll start to kind of float up into what they feel is kind of like outer space, let's say. But then I'll say to them, so how does it feel to be out of the body? And every single person without fail is like, oh my God, it feels so good. I feel so big. I feel so expansive. I feel so free. And I'll say, you know, do you have the shape of a body? Like, how big do you feel? And they'll be like, I'm massive. Like, I don't have I'm just all there is. I don't have that. I'm not contained. And they say it's the most amazing feeling. So imagine feeling that and then coming and being born. Like taking all of your expansive energy and making it into a pinpoint or a baby, the size of a baby. And then you get squeezed out, you know, into this world and you're so small and you can't do anything. Like, how difficult is that? No wonder babies cry. I would cry.
Yeah, and I've heard about that. When I do that kind of stuff, I ask them, how did it feel when you died? So describe the process of death to me.
Oh, I love that.
A lot of people will say, and this is what's crazy, a lot of people had described the same thing. They're like, I got sucked out of my head. I got pulled right out of the top of my head like it was a magnet. Now, I have heard that people that have had, I'll rewind just before I start rambling. I look at this, I call it like a puzzle or a bubble, and I usually like the puzzle analogy, where all this stuff, astral projection, mediumship, past life regressions, near-death experiences, deathbed visions, spirit communication, all that stuff, I think that they're all parts of the same puzzle. And
100%.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get across in this whole show, is that they're all different pieces of the puzzle, and we need to start connecting those pieces and get a new perspective. So you can look at near-death experiences, and you can look at deathbed visions, and you can see, and you can even look at astral projection, and you can see similarities between all of them. So the near-death experiences one, for example, a lot of the time people will come back and they'll look at their body laying either, you know, dead in the hospital or in the ambulance, and they'll look at it and they'll be like, how am I going to fit in that? And they'll have that thought, like, I can't fit in there. I don't want to go back in there. That's hard. I don't want to do that. I'm massive. Awesome. And so a lot of the times they'll just have to, either they'll just wake back up, or I heard one guy who got pushed back into his body or something like that. I'd have to do, you know, pull up the actual experience, but
I have an experience of that, so I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was just saying, like, what you were saying, that happens when people, and the definition for anybody listening of a near-death experience is someone who is clinically dead, meaning their heart has stopped, there's no brain activity, they're dead, and then they're resuscitated. That's what's classified as a near-death experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't had an NDE, but I did when I was pregnant with my first son. I had an interesting experience. I was meditating one day, just kind of like trying to do like a relaxation meditation. Like, I'm going to be giving birth soon, got to get relaxed. And I was like, just sitting there relaxing. And all of a sudden I kind of like almost went into, you know, a little tiny bit of a dream state. And in the dream, I was at the top of a slide and I started sliding down. And as I slid down, the slide began to look like very organic, kind of like a vaginal canal. I was like, oh my God, because I'm pregnant, am I having just some sort of weird birth thing going on? But I popped out the bottom and I left my body. Like it was almost like like I've astrally projected before. And when I did, I always felt like I went out of my head or out of my chest. This felt like, I don't know, I felt like I actually went inside my body and out of my vagina. I'm sorry for too much information, but I popped out and I didn't have a body. And I felt that experience that my clients have described of, oh my God, like I'm so big. And I was so big, Ian, I put my hand around the moon. No word of a lie. I was big enough that I could put my hand around the moon like it was an apricot. And it was I didn't want to go back in my body. And then I could see my body look like a little pinprick. And I had that same thought, like, I can't fit back in there. How am I going to get back in that thing? I don't even want to. I don't care if there's a baby in that thing. I'm not going back. But of course, I did go back, but it felt absolutely disgusting and horrible to come back in. As soon as I got in, I was like, okay, I'm happy to be back. Like, I miss my husband. I want to have a baby. I want to drink some Coca-Cola or a cup of tea or whatever. But oh my God, being out of my body and having to go back in, like, if people are afraid of death, you have no idea how beautiful it is to not be in your body, how magical and wonderful, peaceful it is, how good it feels, how joyful you feel. And it is all one. It is just another component to this big puzzle. I like your analogy, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And I've heard that too. What's weird is you call your own body a thing. That's what's weird about it. It's like,
it was
look
a
at
thing.
That thing. Ew. Look at that squishy meat bag. I don't
look at that. Yeah, it's a meat bag. I don't want to go back in that old meat bag there. Well, even the few times that I've astrally projected, if I have looked at my body, it's a thing. It's like a weird unanimated corpse. It's like, ugh, okay, I'm going in. I guess I have to do this. But yeah, no, it is. It's a thing because I was with my grandma I was actually with two people, just helping them as they died. And the same thing, they leave their body and you look and yeah, that's their body, but it doesn't look like them. They're not there. It's like so amazing.
Yeah, like viewings at funerals always creep me out. I don't look at them because it's not them. It's hard to describe. Everybody's like, that's so disrespectful that you're not gonna go like pay your respects to the body. And I'm like, why do I have to pay respects to the body? It's gross. Like there's a dead body there. And I'm sorry for anybody listening who disagrees with that. But it's not them. It's their meat bag.
It's their earthly remains. Yeah, it's just it's a meat puppet.
It's weird to talk about it. I haven't really ever heard anybody talk about it that much. So it might be taboo.
Oh, death is like such a normal thing. I actually lay in bed with someone as they were dying, and I just stayed close to them until they passed away, just because they'd had a very lonely life. And I thought, you know what? You may have like kind of had an alone life and no one's ever slept in a bed with you, but I'm going to sleep beside you and until you die. But you better die soon because I'm not fitting in this hospital bed very well. I was like squished up against the person, but it wasn't scary. It was like a really beautiful moment. Like you're just leaving, you're astrally projecting, except you're never coming back in again.
Yeah, there's this phenomena that I've just scratched the surface of. People have been studying it for like 40 plus years now and document it like actual doctors. It's called deathbed visions. You should look into it if you're interested in that, but I don't want to dive too deep into that because I had a question I was going to ask you. But yeah, deathbed visions, they talk about that, like how death is a very natural thing and drugs can affect it. Anyway, my question for you, Fiona, is have you ever regressed a pregnant woman?
No, I haven't. Oh my God, I want to now. I haven't even ever Have you regressed a pregnant woman?
Yes, my wife.
Oh, and so was there something different going on? Like, was the baby regressing?
So here's what's
What's
weird.
happening?
It
Oh, I
was like
love this.
she was
Please blow my mind, Ian.
she was talking about her life and stuff, and she was with her guide. Her guide was there. And it's just hard to talk, like, it's weird. It's just weird. She said it almost felt like there was like little pinpricks of like stray. She said that it was like a, sometimes when it's hard to describe. I'm like rambling, but have you ever been in your car? Have you ever been in your car and then you're trying to get to a radio station, and you turn to the radio station, but you're like a decimal off, and there's that static.
Yep.
Yep. She said it was like that, and she's never had it because I've regressed her a bunch of times, and she's always had really clear stuff. But she was like, it was hard to stay focused because there was this like static or this interference, and she was like, I was like, that's weird, and she was like, I think it was the baby. I think the baby's energy was affecting my focus, and because I asked her if I could speak to her guide, because that's kind of what we agreed to, is like I was going to try to, after she had gone through her regression and after she had gone through the death, I was going to try to speak to her guide so I could get some questions answered, because I really want to talk to some spirit guides. That's my selfish goal, and she allowed me to indulge in that. But she said, and this happened very quickly, she said, I said, would your guide be willing to speak with me? And she said, they said yes, but not tonight. And I said, okay, when? And they said, I'm not sure, but not tonight. Now is not the time. So when she came out, she said that she just really felt like the baby was going to interfere with her guide talking to me, which is weird.
That is so cool. Okay, I'm going to actively try to find a pregnant woman to regress who's into it. And when I do, I'll let you know. If anything cool happens, I'll be like, okay, Ian, we have to have another podcast, or else I'll just message you and be like, guess what happened? Or maybe it'll just be like nothing. I don't know. That's such a cool, I've never thought about what that might be like to regress someone who's pregnant. I thought you were going to say the baby came in and had their regression, that she could like see a past life, but it wasn't hers. And the baby's like, that's my regression, Mom.
Yeah, no, it was like turning the radio to the station you want, but it's like a decimal off. So you hear the music or the talking or whatever, but it's like that little.
Oh, I love it.
So she couldn't get completely focused because she was like, she just said, I think it was the baby. I feel like it was the baby. However, I did get an interesting piece of information when I was questioning her about choosing her next life, and she said that she wanted this life to be random. And I said, so can you choose like what happens in your next life? Like, can you choose if it's more random or not? And she said, yes, that I feel like that's correct. My wife never uses the word correct, so it's kind of weird. But she was like, yes, I feel like that's correct. And she was like, I wanted this life to be random. She's like, I was getting into a pattern and I wanted it to be random life. And I wanted to have a lot of options. And what's interesting is she's had a ton of options in this life. Like, she could have had her pick of guys to be with, because there was like a million of them coming after her, and she chose me for some reason.
Oh, I can already tell why she chose you. Because there'll never be a dull moment with Ian. Ian's not going to just sit and watch golf on TV. Ian's going to be like, let's regress you and talk to your guide. Because like that's just a more like, it sounds like you sound like a psychonaut who's like, maybe you are, maybe you aren't using any hallucinogens, but I think it's the same thing. Cause I mean, I definitely have a little, like, my big goal is healing. I love helping people in healing, but I also when people are going into crazy regressions where they're rain, I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm learning something I didn't know. Like I definitely I hoard information. I just want to know the answers to everything. And you get to regress people and actually find out some of the answers. And it's so cool. So your wife must have so much fun with you. It's like, so Ian, what happened during the regression today? Or how was that podcast with that chakra reader, or that astrologist? It's fascinating stuff, right?
Yeah, I always talk to her about it. There was one time where I was just kept on talking. She's like, okay, I've listened to you for 4 hours. Can I talk about what I want to talk about? And I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, my main thing, obviously it's always about the person, right? That's the first priority. Mm-hmm. I just want to know, okay? I have a hard time with my own guides. I can't, because I have that aphantasia. I don't hear my own voice in my head. I hear nothing in my own brain. I see nothing in my own brain. It's just dark and silent whenever I close my eyes. And I just am so curious. I would love to have someone essentially channel their guide so I can ask some questions. And I know it's really selfish of me, so I'm really grateful to my wife for letting me kind of do that.
And I don't think it's selfish, Ian. Like it's helpful for the person as well as for you. Right? Say, I don't think the person who what's that famous guy what was his name? There's so many books written about him. I feel like he lived in like the early 1900s. Edgar Cayce. Something Cayce. I can't remember his name, but he would go into a meditative state, and then this woman or this other person that was with him would ask all these questions and get so much information. And they wrote so many books on so many. He was the first person that really brought up Atlantis. And that's not selfish. That's this is how we explore, right? It takes a few people to explore. It takes one person to even think of exploring. We need people like you or me who want to ask the questions, and then that we all learn from that, right? So it's definitely not selfish, but yeah, I let you do that all the time. It's kind of awesome. I hope when your children are old enough to talk, that you'll be like, so where did you used to live before you were with me and Mom?
Oh, I'm already planning on it.
Yeah, and you make sure you record them.
Yeah, I'm already planning on that. I'm really excited to try, because we try to be an open. My son is 2, so he's talking already, and he can convey ideas, but he's not to the point where he's a thinker.
You probably have another year before he'll really give you anything. But I mean, I still remember my mom just looking at me and going, "You've never mailed a letter."
And it shuts you down. It immediately oh, maybe I never have.
Nope. I could see myself. I could see my hand. I could see myself sitting in a dark room with an oil lantern, and I was sitting at a desk that faced a window. I was writing on this slanted box, which later I discovered was a writing box. And I could see I had a fountain pen. I could see my writing was very, that beautiful kind of penmanship. And I was just some old lady somewhere. And my mom said, "You never mailed a letter." And I just walked away. In my mind, I'm like, yes, I did. And stamps were only a penny. Not like now, right?
Yeah. Well, most kids, if you tell them that, they'll shut down and they won't talk about it anymore, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, you want to be you want to be as open as you can. I didn't ask my kids those questions. It wasn't on my radar at the time. I was just trying to get through the day, right? But I was always open with anything they did say to me.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of ghosts in our house. It was basically me and my oldest son when he was about 6. We would see the same ghost several times a week. And I would see it first and I would never tell anybody. And then about 2 days later, he would see it in the same spot and he described the same thing. And that would be confirmation that I wasn't crazy, because, you know, I'd see it go like past my bedroom door into the bathroom. And 2 days later, my son would be like, Mom, I saw that ghost today. I was in your bedroom, and he went into the bathroom. And I knew that it wasn't me imagining it. I knew it wasn't him making it up, because we both saw the exact same thing. So I was always really open about stuff like that with my kids. But now they're older. They don't really see anything anymore. Like, my oldest isn't even into it at all. I think my youngest, who's 17 now, maybe once in a while sees things.
One thing that I would really like to talk to you about, and I always come back to this because it's just so fascinating to me because of the way I grew up, is spirit guides. So could you talk to me a little bit, because I'm sure you've interacted with them or you've had some brush ups or experiences with guides, and I would love to hear some of those experiences.
It's funny, like, spirit guides have never been, like, I don't know if I just take them for granted. I've never been overly interested in spirit guides. I definitely have had, I've had downloads from spirit guides, and I feel like people place a lot of importance on them and imagine a spirit guide as like this one, you know, ancient spirit that's like with you all of the time. And I feel like spirit guides change. And I also feel like they're almost like a conglomerate, because when I have channeled information, they'll never say I, they'll say we. And I even feel them energetically. Like, when I'm getting information, I don't feel like one spirit guide is saying stuff to me. It feels like a multitude are all talking to me at once with the same message, if that makes any sense.
They're like an organization. I kind of feel like they're like a, and Alia, I talked to Alia about this too, is that I feel like they're an organization, and they have a system. It's so weird to talk about, but I've also gotten, even with my aphantasia, I've gotten a kind of a download before, and it was different than almost anybody else I've talked to.
So tell me, when you get your downloads, what is their personality?
Okay.
Do they feel friendly and funny? Do they feel serious? Do they feel ancient? Is it different all the time?
Yeah, it depends. And like I said, I've only had like a download kind of a thing one time, and I'll definitely talk about it. One of them got up in my client's face. It was my sister. They got up into my sister's face and put their finger in her face, and my sister is like, "Okay, I'm sorry." Sorry. It was when she channeled that girl, and he was tugging on the rope to get her out, and he just walked up an invisible staircase, opened a door out of nothing, and then walked through the door. And then I didn't know that had happened because she didn't tell me. And I was like, do I have your guide's permission to bring you back out? Which I don't know why I even asked that, but I did. And so apparently he opened the door, and I found this out after, and he opened the door, leaned out, and made a shooing motion with his hands, and then slammed the door. So that's one thing. Yeah. So like, that's one. The other, I was regressing someone, and they just kept on seeing walls. And my job as the practitioner is to help you get through these walls. So every time I tried to get them through the walls, they would just see another wall. And they were like, okay, before I move any further, I'm going to ask you this question, and I haven't really heard that many people talk about it. I talked to one other person who brought it up before me, but let me ask you this question. Where in your brain, like the actual location, do you feel like your thoughts come from?
Oh my God, I do this all. Have you heard of Connie Ray? What's her last name? There is an NLP practitioner, Connie Ray Andreas, and she actually has a technique. I think it's called the wholeness technique. But if you look up her name, Connie Ray Andreas, and she asked that question of you. So when you think of where you are, where's the I in you? Like when you say like, I like ice cream, where's I? And some people will feel it in their chest. Some people will actually feel it outside of their body. And it can change from day to day as well. So when you're thinking from your head, that's the I, right? I feel it right behind my eyes and almost going down past behind my jaw, almost to my neck. And one thing she does with clients is she'll get you to feel it. She'll get you to describe it. Like, is it a color? Is it a shape? And my shape is kind of almost like a fat, wavy snake. And then she'll say, is it misty? Is it solid? And I'm like, it almost feels watery to me. But then she'll say, now see if you can like grow it bigger to fit your body. See if you can take the eye and stretch it, stretch it so it fills your whole body and fills and actually expands further. Just like how we talked about how when we leave our body and then we have to squish ourselves back in. Her belief is that when we're little kids, we don't know where we leave, where we are and where we don't know the difference between our body and the crib. When we have no language, we don't know anything. We're just like looking out of a body. And when a mother points at you or a parent points at you and says, you've been so bad, you see the finger pointing at your face and you automatically assume that that's where you are. And so her idea is that we want to stretch that out and expand it so we're not so tight. So she says when we can expand the eye and bring it out and maybe even past our body, it's expansion. It gives us space. There's less tension when there's more expansion. So I know I just answered your question in a big crazy way, but yeah, that's where
that is so freaking cool. That is so
Isn't that
cool.
amazing?
I've got to reach out to this lady and get her on my show.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, she's quite, I'll send you a link to her stuff. That'd be great if you got her on your show.
Yeah. That is so cool. I haven't really heard anybody else really talk about it. So you feel yours right behind your eyes, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Mine is like, it's like in the middle back of my skull, almost like I feel like in the dead center of my head. And let me tell you why I want to circle back for sure, because that was so cool. You just blew my mind. That was so cool. But with this experience, because I'm just going to wrap this up real quick. I feel my thoughts in the middle back of my head. I felt like a stamp. It was like somebody from left to right. They said the words, "Bring her out. There's nothing for her here." And then she was like, my guide's not going to let me see anything. There's nothing for me here. And so that's the only time I've ever had like a physical sensation of because my thoughts don't come from the front of my forehead. And that's where I felt the stamp. It was like from the front of my forehead, from left to right. I don't get my thoughts from there. That's not where my thoughts come from. And I almost just didn't even pay attention to it. But then I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. So I always tell people, like, when you're thinking and you feel something like a thought come in from another point in your head, pay attention. Pay attention to that.
Oh my God. You know what? When I download stuff from guides, it actually comes from outside. I can actually feel where it comes from. It almost feels like they're in front of my face, but slightly above my forehead. And I actually feel it. It's almost like they're putting it into, hang on, I have to think about how it feels. Let me just think about the last time it happened. It feels like they're kind of almost dropping it into the crown of my head, just right above my forehead. So it definitely feels like it's coming from another thing. But it's funny, when I asked you about the personalities of guides, when you've picked up on them. So whenever I download information, I don't know if it's from a client's guides or it's my guides myself, because it always feels like it's the same people. And they're kind of bitchy. Like, I always jokingly say to clients, like, I just got spanked. Because it'll always be when I'm working with a client and I do something wrong that the guides don't like. and they'll actually start almost berating me, not in a horrible way, but almost like an angry teacher. They'll say, Fiona, you need to stop doing this. You need to do this. And you need to this is what it's really like. And it was funny because I was working with a client. They wanted to work with crystals. And I mean, I do when I do body work, I will use crystals, but I'm not like a super big crystal person. I love them. They're beautiful. I don't always follow what the books say. I'll just kind of, I'll use intuition. But I was using crystals with a client. And in my mind, I kind of thought is this even doing anything? And these guides came in and spanked me. And in a really cool way, they said to me, who do you think invented all this stuff? Every single modality that you can pay for, that you can take a course for, that you can practice, a human being on this planet made it up out of their mind. And it became a practice that works. And then they said, a stone can be a crystal, a rock, a stick on the ground, moss can be a crystal. Every shaman, there was no shaman school 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. Shamans were in their own little villages, and each person themselves was just walking around saying, if I take this grass and sprinkle it on their head, it'll get rid of the evil spirits that's making them depressed. Or if I take them over to this waterfall, this is a magical place. And we just we create the magic. We create the crystals that do this and that. And we create Reiki. And someone on this planet was I'm going to ask people the right questions in a relaxed state. And they created hypnotism, and Connie Ray Andreas sat there one day and was like, where is the I in I? Just like you had that question. You're like, where am I inside myself? She had the same question. And then she said, what would happen if we tried this? What if we tried to relax the I? Just relax it and let it expand. What's going to happen, right? So when we as practitioners go in with our clients and ask different questions and try different techniques and then share the techniques, we're just going further and further and doing more and more magical stuff. It's so crazy. And yeah, guides. Sorry, I totally went off on a tangent. I have interacted with guides and they're kind of bitchy with me. They usually spank me and give me good advice. And sometimes they kind of get a little bit pissed off at me. And I don't know if those are my guides or if it's everyone's guides in general. I'm not sure.
Mine, I always ask my clients, can you tell me their name? And they almost every single one of them has said the exact same thing. Almost every one of them is I couldn't pronounce that even if I tried. My wife said that when she asked her guide her name, it's a bunch of symbols flashed in her mind that she'd never seen before. It's like a language, but it's not. It was just a symbol. She drew me one of them out. She's like, it kind of looked like this. I had never seen it before. And I was like,
what did the symbol look like?
Oh, I will see if I can get her to draw it again because I lost the paper. It was weird. It was like this. It almost looked like a pictogram. It was like a triangular thing with a couple dots, and it was just weird. She was like, I don't know if I can even recreate it because it was just so strange. And she's like,
that's so cool.
I couldn't, but I always ask. And then I asked her, I was like, do they not like it when I ask their names? And she said, no, they don't care that you ask, but you'll never be able to say them. And one of them, I asked someone, I was like, can you tell me your guide's name? And their guide just shook their head no. It's like, does he not want to tell me? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh, okay.
Or it could be that they're a conglomerate and there's too many names. They're like Jack, Joe, Johnny, Ricky, Stevie, whatever. There's too many names. Well, it's funny about the symbol thing because when I got my second degree in Reiki, I don't know if you know about Reiki. So it's an energy healing system and there's these very specific symbols that you use during a healing. And they're kind of passed down from the very first person that made the whole system up, as my guides would tell me. And so when you get your second degree in Reiki, they give you these symbols. And my teacher was kind of like you and me. She liked to push things a little. So during the training, she got me into, she wasn't a hypnotist, but she put me in like a guided kind of deeply relaxed state. And she said, I want you to go to a garden, and there's going to be a symbol in that garden, a Reiki symbol that's just for you. And I found this like big stone statue, and it was almost like in the shape of a number 4, except it wasn't a flat, it was a 3-dimensional symbol. So all the Reiki symbols are flat symbols that you can draw on a piece of paper. My symbol was 3-dimensional. Like it actually went off in a couple of different directions. And I've always, in every session I've ever done with a client, whether Reiki or hypnosis, I always use my Reiki energy, and I always use the symbols. And I've always felt about that symbol that it was an access to multi-dimensional information. And that, I think, is why my clients from the very get-go, because I used that symbol from the beginning, why even though I was just a new practitioner, I was young, I didn't know what I was doing really, my clients were having past life memories even back then. So those symbols, there's magic in those symbols, right?
Yeah, and she said that was the only one she could remember, but there was like a long stream of symbols that just like flashed, just like,
that's so cool.
She was like countless symbols. They were just like, I couldn't. So maybe there were a conglomerate. Maybe it's, who knows? Maybe that all those symbols were just the names of everybody, because there's just like tons and tons of symbols.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I have picked up on guides with clients that did just feel like one guide, but I know that whenever I've had a download of information, that it felt like a group for sure, a big group. And I think maybe the group changes from day to day, or whatever you're working with. Like if you're developing your mediumship, there might be some specific guides. If you are healing people, there might be specific guides. And then I don't know, I don't consider guides to be guides. I feel like they're members of our soul family. And we have our people who are like our soul family members who we're helping out. Our soul family members who are kind of equal to us. And then we have our soul family members, just like in your own family. You might have your nephew that you babysit. You might have your sister and your brother who you go hang out with. And then you might have an uncle who teaches you how to fix cars, or who, teaches you things or gives you advice. So I feel like our guides, they aren't some like special magical thing. I feel like they're just members of our soul family, and we may have had past lives with them. Like maybe they were our dad, or maybe they were our captor who actually taught us some big lesson by keeping us captive. Like it's hard to say, right?
And it's probably all of the above.
Yeah.
Probably everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Fiona, would you be willing to come back on my show sometime? Because I feel like there's lots more to talk about, but I'm going to have to cut a lot of this stuff and then release like 2 different episodes, like an extended one. And
yeah, for sure. And I'll come back on anytime you like, because this was fun. You blew my mind too. Like I live to have my mind blown. That is my drug. That's my gambling. That's my vice. Like that is just like hearing something that makes my brain have to create new neural pathways is like the best feeling ever.
Yeah, I also live for that feeling. So, do you want to just like plug your website or your blog or whatever?
I totally want to plug my website. So my website is clearpathhealing.com. And yeah, there's stuff about me on there, and there's contact and services, and yeah, I do energy work, and I do past life regression. I do quantum regression. And I also do past life readings, and those are through email. And yeah, no, I'd love it if anybody wants to come see me. And I definitely would love to come back on and talk some more with you about all the cool stuff. There's many cool things. And I definitely have like a couple of neat little astral projection stories that we could talk about that were pretty cool.
Yeah, that's perfect. Is there any kind of a message or an inspiring message you'd like to leave for the audience?
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot, Ian. No, you know what? Honestly, like I hope that more people will be open to exploring this type of work, and also to know that it's not scary. Like ghosts are not scary. And having a regression, I've never once, and you can probably say the same thing. I've never once had a client come out of a regression regretting the regression. Every client comes out and is like, oh my God, I feel so relaxed. I feel so much more at peace. That was really exciting. That was really cool. So I hope that people will explore this. Like it's legal, it's safe, it's accessible, whether you have money or don't have money. You can have a free regression on YouTube. You can often find hypnosis students who, aren't charging very much. And you can come to people like me that, charge a little bit less than most people. Or if you have the cash, like, go get on a waiting list and go see some big famous person. I don't know who they are, but, there's so many options to do this work. And it's available to everybody. And, I hope more people do it. That's all I really want to say.
Well, that's great, Fiona. Thank you so much for coming on to my show.
My pleasure, Ian. It was so much fun talking to you.
That's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Fiona for coming on to the show, and I'd also like to thank you for tuning in. A couple updates to the podcast. It's available on more and more platforms, including Stitcher Radio, Pocket Casts, things like that. And also, I'm uploading all the episodes to YouTube, but it takes a long time, so cut me some slack. If you like the show, I'd appreciate you subscribing in your podcast player and sharing the show around with anyone you think might be interested, or even someone who you think would be interested in coming onto the show. If you're interested in coming onto the podcast and talking with me about your experiences, send me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.